Hello, everyone. Okay, so welcome to Plants for Protection. This is a very interesting topic. It feels like every time I pick a topic for the more kind of magical, mystical side of herbal medicine, just things in my life seem to, sort of reflect the topic, or I get some juicy bits to share around a certain topic. So first, I'd like to define my terms, and I think it's important with plants for protection. So what do I say? What do I mean when I'm talking about protection? So that's really safety from danger, right? But then I think it gets more nuanced. Like, what are we protecting ourselves from? And traditionally, historically, plants have been worked with to protect from things like evil eye. And evil eye is kind of like people's ill wishes or jealousy, whether it's consciously directed or unconsciously directed. Misfortune, kind of like ill steps or being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Natural disasters, fires, floods, lightning, those kinds of things have been kind of what plants have been worked with for protection. And in contemporary times, it's a little bit different because we do live in a complex, globalized world where threats can be a little bit more ambient. Yes, we have all of the threats and the dangers of times past, but we're so interconnected and aware of what's going on the other side of the globe. So the feeling of what we need to be protecting ourselves from can be overwhelming at times. So I think part of the way that that plants can help us is being able to be discerning about what we need to protect ourselves from. So, that is really the question, what is a threat? And having clarity around danger or the level of danger, its intensity, its direction can really actually help us better protect ourselves. And, these kinds of questions that we ask, do I perceive something as a threat because of past experiences? What is the nature of the danger that I perceive? And then kind of what helps me be safe or feel safe? So that's kind of what I spoke to before. If we are able to assess what is a threat and what isn't, we're actually more able to protect ourselves. And when we're kind of seeing everything around us as a threat, we're sort of less able to protect ourselves because we also might miss, that there's support around us or resources around us. So again, discernment and clarity is a big piece to protection. And then, thinking about what is intuition versus projection. So the plants that I'm going to be covering will be able to address the kind of like, protection from, but then also that inner realm of assessing threat and danger, and giving us a sense of clarity around those topics, because that is a big piece of this puzzle. So I'm gonna share my screen before I forget. Everybody could just mute there. Yeah, folks wouldn't mind. Okay. Oh, I think Lou, could you mute? Yeah, I can mute. I'll mute you.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. All right, cool. All right. So I like to kind of think about, protection and the kind of human realm. Things can get pretty complicated. So for me, it's always helpful to sort of pan out and think about what are the mechanisms in nature that are there for protection, and then how do plants protect themselves? And plants are really interesting sort of live beings because they ultimately have to stay where they are, right? They move a little bit, of course, they're growing and they're moving with the sun and everything like that, but they're also in the ground. So over millennia, millions and millions and millions of years, far before we were here, they were figuring out really interesting strategies to protect themselves while staying still. So looking to the plant world for sort of as guides is one thing that that I think is really interesting when we think about protection and how to work with plants for protection. So there are a few different protective strategies in nature. Firstly, obviously, is kind of strength, intimidation, size, teeth, speed, or an alliance with something very strong. So thinking about like, a baby to like a mama bear or something like that. Then there's deterrence or shields, and those can be, thorns. Those can be like actual barriers. They can be strong scents, shells, poisons. Those kinds of things are sort of deterrence. And then one really interesting strategy is confusion. So that could be camouflage. So I'm wearing camouflage today. Camouflage mimicry, like birds that will make the sound of a predatory bird to kind of keep their territory safe. And then odors can kind of come into that, into the confusion category as well. So maybe smelling like something that they are not, but so that's kind of this like mimicry. So really, that's like that would be like a umbrella way to think about different strategies, but plants kind of do combinations of these things. So I'm going to be talking about 3 different plants that employ some of these protective strategies. And they're plants that I've spoke about before, but the thing about plants is I could talk about plants, one plant probably for days and days and days. They have just such like a person. They have so much dimensionality. So the first plant, which is great because, like I said, as it relates to my life, I was literally just harvesting this plant today prior to this call. St. John's wort, Empiricum perforatum. So this plant kind of works with the protective strategy of strength, and that's really through a solar alliance. Hold on, I'm just going to go down here really quick. Hold on. All right. And so St. John's wort is sort of like a focal point for solar radiance and solar energy. So when we think about working with St. John's wort for protection, we're really thinking about aligning and bringing that solar radiance, that blinding light, that heat, that clarity into a situation, and that kind of transformative energy. So there might be some kind of like black coming our way or whatever, but then the power of the sun is actually about that transformation. It takes one substance and burns it and turns it into something else. So the actions of St. John's wort, when we think about it, its effect on our physiology, it's vulnerary, so it helps heal wounds. It helps with skin abrasion, rashes, stretch marks, those kinds of things. So that ability to kind of take something that's taken apart and bring it back together. Also for nervine, for nerve pain. For some kinds of depression, situational depression, also seasonal depression. So this plant is really good when applied to like a rupture. It can really help bring things kind of back together. So the most potent time, so this is in the Slovenian folk tradition, is to harvest St. John's wort during Kres, so that's around the summer solstice. So that is the peak of the solar energy of the power of the sun. So you want to this plant is basically absorbing the powers of the sun. So you harvest St. John's wort during the solstice, and then that plant is the most potent sort of. That's that aspect of itself as sort of a symbol of the solar energy is the most potent during that time. So bunches of St. John's wort were then kind of put into wreaths and then put around livestock to protect them above barn doors. This plant was in Slovenia was especially used for protection against fire of lightning. And it was also used, if people had a severe fear of thunder, it was also used to, if you carried a bundle of St. John's wort under your arm, it was helpful for fear of thunder, which is really interesting. And then the spirit medicine of this plant relates to everything that I said. So it really brings light and warmth into the dark and stagnant places for clarity and for transformation. So one of the ways that I would suggest working with St. John's wort for protection, bringing that kind of clarity, that like blinding light, is to make a wreath of St. John's wort harvested around the solstice, on the solstice, if you can manage, and putting it on your door, putting it, either a wreath on your door or putting sort of like a bunch of it above your door. That is an excellent application of St. John's wort. You can also, of course, use it topically in an oil, those kinds of things too. And then when it dries, it actually turns this really beautiful shade of red. So it just really feels like it has that solar energy. Okay. Next plant, this is rue. So the protection style of rue is as a ward. So this is a sort of energetic barrier and a deflector. It averts. It's been used. This plant has a lot of historical traditional use in Eastern Europe, Southern Eastern Europe, as well as in Mexico, in Huautla. They have, and this is a part of Oaxaca, many people have a pot of rue or have rue planted right outside of their doorway. So this is one of these sort of barrier, thorny kind of like, nope, this is part of the symbolism of the wall of the rue plant. So, and then in the middle there is the cimaruta. That is an Italian symbol that is used for protection, and that is basically a sprig of rue, and then there's different symbols on it depending. There's a variety of different shapes of the cimaruta, but there's the moon, there's the heart, the key, the frog. So this is a well-used symbol in Italian witchcraft and folk medicine. So it's just felt like a really good thing to kind of highlight and put in the middle there. So the actions of this plant on the body, I would definitely not suggest working with this with rue internally. It can be very toxic. It can cause a lot of discomfort, but it has been used traditionally as an antiseptic to the skin, a powerful antifungal. In Mexico, it's used to treat lice, and also in Slovenia, they used it to treat lice. So it's a really powerful antimicrobial. And, we can kind of see the correlation. If there's a strong barrier, that this plant might be pretty intense to microbes or to parasites, the same kind of like get out. If you sniff through, it doesn't have an especially lovely scent. It has something that's kind of acrid, resinous. But the working with this plant, the way that I would recommend is actually through kind of channeling its spirit medicine. So this can be, growing rue right outside of your doorway as a sort of barrier and energetic, like, no, to sort of the forces that you are trying to create that kind of barrier to. The spirit energy, the spirit medicine of this plant is really interesting because it really supports gathering scattered energy and psychic confusion. So rue can be really grounding. So again, that piece of having kind of like clarity. I think one of the things that can be sort of underneath a need to protect oneself is if we are really scattered, our attention is all over the place. We're kind of missing things, missing cues, not really listening to ourselves because we're really disconnected from our center. Just sniffing some rue, having this plant around, being able to interact with it can really help us bring our attention back inside, back to our center, have us feel kind of grounded, so we can, again, better approach our life and situations that might be threatening to us. Okay. Next plant. Juniper. So juniper's protective sort of strategy is through cleansing, through clearing, through kind of its antimicrobial, antiseptic properties. So this is the plant for really cleansing the doors of our perception and clearing out kind of these like patterns build up that that basically promotes like a better energetic hygiene in our perception and in our lives. So this plant is one of the kind of primary magical plants in Slovenian folk tradition. It has tons of use both as a food and as a medicine. Antimicrobial, like I mentioned, so topically even used for cleaning, but then also the berries were chewed for all kinds of different infections, for digestive issues, for headaches. This juniper has so many different uses traditionally and as a contemporary medicinal plant. And the spirit medicine of juniper is it helps to bring clarity, to take us out of a sort of victim mindset, so we can recognize and access both our inner and outer resources. So we can recognize when somebody is there to help, or to help us recognize that maybe a situation might come up that would put us in a better kind of position around things that we are feeling threatened about. So an excellent ally in the kind of trifecta of plants that I'm talking about here. And another way that one can use juniper, you can work with a tincture of juniper, the juniper berries, essential oils to diffuse. That also just brings like a sort of an aromatic clarity. If you break the juniper berry and sniff it, it kind of, it's refreshing, enlivening. You can also burn juniper needles. And this plant was in Slovenian tradition, folk tradition, burned to clear out rooms, especially after like a guest, a shady guest would leave or something. That would be, this would be a way to kind of clear the space and clear that kind of energy. You can also work with this plant, add a couple juniper berries to your spout. It's one of those aromatic kind of plants used in gin and in culinary use. So really applicable to just our day-to-day lives. And it's, when you look at the plants too, I think that there's so much that we can kind of intuitively pick up from just looking and connecting with a plant. So these kind of like this like prickly, but also kind of attractive, there's something about the juniper that is just one of my favorite plants actually. So I just wanted to leave a little bit of room for any questions. I know every time I do these Herbal Lives, I'm trying to cover so much ground. So I hope that this is helpful, but I just want to spend the last little bit of our time together, taking questions. Let me take a look at the chat here. Any questions or comments? And the other thing too is if you want to just speak into the abyss here, I would love to see your faces and just hear your voices too. So, any thoughts? Thank you. Do you all feel like you're going to use some of this information today? Do you have specific things that are coming up that you feel like you want to work with one of these plants for?
Hey, Rachel, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Susan.
Hi, Susan.
On the St. John's wort and the rue, so can they both be used externally with like a coconut oil?
I would say the St. John's wort, absolutely. I don't know if you would want to with the rue. It's a pretty strong medicine. It can be irritating. So I would think of rue as just having as a plant that you're growing, or a plant that you have around just to kind of smell. Yes.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for your question. So would St. John's wort be safe to use topically if you're pregnant? Yes. So one thing that I would say about St. John's wort, if you're using it a bunch topically, is it can make you more photosensitive, so to the sun. So, you know, if you're doing St. John's wort oil like every single day and then you're going out in the sun, I wouldn't recommend that. But, you know, if you're working with St. John's wort oil for stretch marks and that kind of stuff where you're actually wearing clothes over, then you're good. And that would be a great application of that plant.
Number 383. Right there.
Oh, sorry, sorry, didn't hear what you said. Okay, all right, maybe that wasn't a question.
383. Yeah, there's
Oh, wait.
4 things in there, but
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
sometimes
Okay. That's not a question. Any other questions or thoughts?
I'm gonna ask something. Hi.
Yes, great.
Here I can put my camera on too. I'm just wondering, hi, with my hair.
Hi.
Rue, I know I'm really interested in Rue, but I know I'm just interested in it's so powerful and it's so blocking. And I'm just interested if you know anything about how, is there a link between the fact that you know, I think people get even a reaction to it if you touch it sometimes, right? And is that part of where the blocking kind of the connection there, the way that it becomes a symbol for energetic blocking comes from, maybe
Interesting. I don't know. I haven't heard of somebody getting rash from it. I wouldn't be surprised though, because it is a pretty powerful, has pretty, you know, powerful phytochemicals that can be irritating. But, you know, I think with a lot of plants, if we think about, you know, they have strengths to protect themselves. So when we're working with them, we just want to be sensitive to that. So I think, you know, even the smell itself, it's not a pleasant one of rue. And so you're aligning with that plant's energy when you do need to make a strong barrier. So, you know, I feel like certain situations in our lives, we need to do that, or we want to do that. So I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, there's a lot of the sort of phytochemistry is a reflection of the plant's nature. So that's what we're working with when we're talking about kind of the more energetic realms.
Yeah, no, I guess it was it's not a well-formulated question,
No,
but
okay.
yeah.
It's great to hear your thought process around it. Any other thoughts or questions? Okay, well, I really appreciate all of your time. And if you have questions, you know, that just pop into your mind, you can email us. And also, if you have other ideas for classes that you want to hear about, I would love to hear more feedback about what folks are looking for. There's, again, millions of different ways I could talk about plants all day long. So yeah, I'm very curious to hear what would be helpful in your lives. So thank you, and take good care and enjoy the weekend. And I hope that you get out there in the next month to harvest yourself some St. John's wort on the summer solstice. Take care, everyone. Thank you.